Riley woke up early that morning and quickly showered and dressed in his school uniform. He was a freshman at St. Mark's Academy for Boys, and, although his studies were progressing nicely, he was still homesick. It was November, and he had been away from home for over 2 months. He had always been an excellent student in grammar school and, from his earliest years, had been something of a teacher's pet to the nuns at St. Stephen's. Boarding school was a new experience, however, he missed his mom and sisters and, although he never would have dreamed it before, even the nuns. St. Mark's was a small school run by an order of cloistered priests. There were no females at the academy at all. The teachers as well as the support staff were all members of the religious order. This morning promised to be interesting at least. A small group of ladies from the local parish had been invited to share breakfast with some of the students and their teachers. This was to be something of a get-acquainted session, in that rarely had the academy grounds been open to outsiders, especially women. As a reward for doing especially well in his classes, Christopher had been selected as one of the half-dozen students invited to take part. The breakfast was held off the main dining hall in a separate room. The boys helped serve the breakfast, bringing each of the ladies food before taking their seats, which alternated around the table, one of the ladies, one of the students, and one of the priests. Chris served Father Tom and then brought a plate of bacon, eggs, and pancakes to the woman he would be seated next to. He guessed she was nearly 40 and, although on the heavy side, had a very kind and even pretty face. She thanked him as he took his seat and introduced herself as Mary. Her perfume filled Chris's senses, and after being separated for months now from any female company at all, Chris delighted in the conversation and seldom let his sight off her. He spoke of his studies and his participation in intramural sporting events, and she in turn spoke of her life in the small community just down the road from the academy gates. Mary explained that she was a widow with one daughter away at college on the West Coast. Chris listened attentively and impressed Mary as a perfect little gentleman. The breakfast over, the boys cleared the dishes and the fathers expressed their gratitude to the ladies for attending. A suggestion was made to continue this interaction, perhaps by permitting the students to visit off-campus periodically. Chris returned from the kitchen and moved to take his seat, but Mary motioned him to her lap where, although a little embarrassed, he felt very comfortable. With her arm around the young freshman, she cradled him affectionately against her massive bosom and ran her fingers through his curly hair. She told Father Tom how Chris was such a cute little child, welcome to visit her home at any time, and as the priest agreed to allow the boys off grounds and thanked her for the kind offer, Chris was lost in a flood of senses. He let his head rest against her wondrous breast and let the smell of her heavenly fragrance fill him. The Thanksgiving holidays were now upon them, and this presented something of a problem. While most all the other students were from the region, Chris' family lived almost 1,000 miles distant. Although this was unusual, Chris' father was a member of the alumni and hence the selection of St. Mark's for the boys' education. While his family wasn't poor, flying home for Thanksgiving and then again in a few weeks for Christmas was more than they could afford. It was assumed Chris could remain on campus, and while that was possible, it would cause the staff inconvenience in that repairs to the dormitory had been planned while the students were away. A solution was quickly found. The subject came up on Sunday as Mary was chatting with Father Tom after Mass at the local parish where he assisted. Mary offered to open her home to the boy for the long weekend, and the priest agreed subsequent to approval from Chris and his parents. Of course, after a week of dreams filled with visions of the older woman's motherly nature and the heady aroma of her perfume still in his mind, Chris' answer was guaranteed. His mom and dad also thought it an excellent idea after a recommendation from Father Tom.